welcome to Working Dragon Mystic. I'm Drake. Today we're going to be talking about servitors and what they are and how you can begin to use these in your practice. We're going to also cover how to create a basic servitor. I do offer a whole class on servitors, so that's something we're going to work on and having into the school very shortly and soon. And we are also going to touch on Egregores today and how they differ from servitors. First off, what is a servitor? A servitor is an energetic entity the magician creates to serve him and to achieve a purpose. Now, one of the really beneficial things about servitor magic is you can create the servitor, you can set it to work, and it continues to work while you do other things. Kind of like a manager delegating. Unlike evocation, however, where you're working with entities that do have their own free will and consciousness and can make complex decisions, servitors are really single-minded and focused on a singular goal. So, and that's important. You need to make sure the servitor serves a singular purpose, or the group of powers and abilities that it has is still focused on one single thing. So perhaps the most commonly known type of servitor is designed for protection. Now, what does that mean? You have to determine that. So generally with my protection servitors, I have them keep an eye out for incoming energy to my home or around me. I also have them give me some kind of a mental alert, and I have them chase off or run off any astral nasties, if you will, any minor entities, ghosts or whatnot that I don't want around my house, or they're out to create negative strife around. So, but a servitor is just that. It's a simple, basic energy being that you've created and you've programmed it for a purpose. So how would you go about doing this? Well, the basic and simple way I've learned is that you would name the servitor, give it a unique name that only you know. You don't want to share this name with anyone. I was also taught to create a sigil using that name in some fashion, which we'll cover. You want to create a specific call for that name or that servitor, a way that you can call it to you to give it direction and order if need be. You also want a way to dismiss or dissipate the servitor when you're done with it. And in case of emergencies, you do want a fail-safe or what's called a servitor death. This is it's another command, only this is a very specific command that when given, it destroys the servitor outright no matter what. And the reason you would do this is some people say that servitors, if they're active too long or get too much energy, that they can begin to develop a free will and the magician can lose control of them. In all my years using servitors, I've never actually had this happen as long as you follow the process that I'm going to be giving you for creating them. I tend to find this more in thought forms that weren't intentionally created. But that being said, I still always build in the failsafe just in case. But I have never once had to use it ever. And I have had some servitors running for years and they've never given me a problem. In fact, they do get stronger and they do get better at their tasks, but I've never had an issue with any of them. Another thing that I find to be very beneficial is what's called an anchor item. And this is an item that the servitor's energy is anchored to. And a lot of people use rings or pendants, and those are fine, but we'll get into that. The big thing is, if the anchor item is destroyed for any reason, the energy doesn't have an anchor no more, and basically the servitor will dissipate. And then, of course, there's the ritual to create it. So, and all these go together to create that servitor. Now, how would I do it? in our example for a protection servitor, I'm going to create the servitor. First thing I want to do is I want to get a name of the servitor. It can be any name. It can be made up. In fact, I actually prefer made up names. Don't use popular names, famous names, or nothing like that, because again, you don't want anyone to have access to this name. So, but for the context of this video, we'll use a name, and just a generic name. So we're going to say Grail. We're just going to call him Grail. I don't know why. We're going to use the name Grail. Okay. So with that name, you would then create a sigil. Now there's different ways you can create a sigil. You can use a witch's wheel or an alphabetic rose, where you literally start at the first letter and go line to line to line. Like that was covered in Christopher Pinsack's Outer Temple book. The problem I have with that is some of the letters and names, the sigils get a little too close to looking the same to me. And every sigil should be unique in some way and should be distinctively unique. So I prefer to use an alphabetical method where I would take the name, eliminate the vowels, eliminate any duplicates, and take what I'm left with. And in some cases, I would even take those letters I'm left with and separate the lines, but you don't, and then I'd put that together into a sigil and play around with it. And there's many ways to do it. Or you can literally just take the name and overlay the letters to create a sigil, not even removing anything. Take the full name and overlay it. You can also just create a sigil, period. You don't even need to take the name to do it. You got the name already. You can artistically draw a sigil. Just meditate on the name, think about protection, and what do you want. So, in the name of Grail, I mean, honestly, when I hear Grail, I think of a cup. So I might actually draw a chalice or something and decorate it with symbols of protection, perhaps a sword or a shield, perhaps a pentacle. But I would decorate it in a protective fashion, so that when I look down at this simple image, that's my sigil of this servitor. And of course, underneath it or above it, I would write the name Grail. So once you have your very simple and basic sigil, then you're going to know how are you going to call this servitor once it's created. Think that over. I generally say whatever you decide for the call, and keep it somewhat short and sweet. Incorporate the name into it so that no matter what, again, you're the only one that knows that name, so by incorporating the name into it, you're directly talking to the servitor. And when you do create the call, I like to make the call so that it has to be said 3 times. And this is twofold. First off, you're not going to randomly repeat something 3 times. And secondly, it makes sure that that call goes out into the universe and is heard and responded to far easier than just the one call. That could just be my perception, but I do find it really works, and most of my students have agreed with me on that, to the point where it's what me and everyone I know does at this point. But you're more than welcome to try more or less. That's fine. Then you want to figure out the destruction and dissipation. Now this one is interesting because it can be on command and or a time frame. Now time frame is what a lot of magicians like to use, and the command is kind of the backup. So for example, if you want the servitor active for 3 months, you would actually set the date from 3 months from creation that this servitor will go ahead and dissipate into nothing and return to source. You would set up the command for something as simple as, when I say Grail, you are dismissed and will now dissipate into source. That the servitor will dissipate and return to source. Its energy will essentially be deconstruct it. And this command, again, I actually like to do a repetition of 3, again, because it's not something you're going to do accidentally. So I like to have that repetition in there. You want to have the death command in there. And what this is this is a failsafe that no matter what, it utterly obliterates the servitor. And for me, I usually keep it something simple like, Grail, I call for your death. Or Grail, death take you. Something like that. And I make it repeatable. Something short, sweet, and repeatable. And the big thing is that name's in there. And you're going to want to have all this recorded because you don't want to forget it, obviously. So I'd say, Grail, I call for your death. Grail, death take you. And I keep it that simple. Okay, the next thing is the anchor item. What is the anchor item? Well, it can be as simple as a basic ring. Any kind of ring. It doesn't have to be in special metal or anything. It can be plastic or whatever. It can be a pendant. I know a lot of people use those. It can be a ceramic statue, or I don't know if you got a couple of these little guys lying around. You can even bind them in those. And those are all great. They do work, and I have no problem with them. But honestly, what I tend to use more often than not is paper. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be major or anything. But I usually use just a piece of paper, and usually just like the sigil. The next step is the description. This is where, now the creation for a servitor that I use is a 2-part. You could roll it into one giant ritual, but I prefer to break it into 2. I find it to be very, very effective that way. So the first part of the creation of a servitor ritual is description. And for this, I keep it simple and personal. I actually set it up like I'm writing a letter to the servitor, like it already exists. So I will name the servitor in the letter. And I will start to actually state exactly what this servitor does. So for the case of protection, you will protect my home and my family. You will protect us from any negative or ill magic sent our way, and you will chase off any negative entities that come toward us or our home. Something as simple as that. That's very specific. It's direct enough, but it's open-ended enough at the same time. And once that's done in the description, I would actually state, Grail, you will come to me when I call your name 3 times. Okay, pretty simple. You will serve me, and I would continue in the description that you will serve me for 3 months, and then you will dissipate and return to source. Or should I call for your dissipation and say, Grail, you are released, dissipate and return to source now, and say that 3 times. So here you're already putting in both the call and the dissipate commands for the servitor in your description. You will also want to include the death command next in your description of the letter and work it in there so that you will say, in the event, Grail, that I can say 3 times, Grail, I call for your death, you will be destroyed and returned to source no matter what. It's as simple as that. Once that's into your letter, you're good to go. The next one is item of anchor, in which case you literally state what you're going to be anchoring this energy to. If it's the piece of paper you're writing on, write into this piece of paper, into this sigil. Now, one thing you do want to do is you want to put the sigil in the letter, and you want to state, Grail, this is your sigil. Well, I tend to do this at the end, just because I like to have the sigil at the end. I don't know. But if you wanted to, you could actually open with the sigil at the beginning. So that's totally up to you. Just make sure you do get that in there. And you want to make sure you state what item you're attaching it to. And now this is one giant ritual all in itself. You don't really need to be in a circle or a sacred space, though deep meditative state. And if you want to cast a circle, that can definitely help and benefit, add energy to it. But anytime you start pinning something in these descriptions and you're focusing your intent, that is putting a lot of energy into it. And that's what you're wanting to do. This whole time you're building that image and that construct. Now, one of the things you do want to put into this description is a description. Describe the egregore. What's it look like? What's some of its features? You want to make sure that you can visualize what this thing looks like, because you're wanting to give it some form of tangibility and visual form to it while you're doing this. And you want to hold that in your mind while you're writing this letter. Now, once that's done, what I was taught to do is you can go ahead and complete the ritual if you're in a hurry. No problems there. Or, and this is what I prefer to do, is to take at least 3 days, if not a week, and have that description somewhere where you're going to see it every day. And every day you look at it. And when you look at it, you think Grail. You think of the image of it. And that pushes more energy to that entity. Just more energy straight to that entity, making it a little stronger and stronger. Now, after 3 to 7 days, this is where you will actually bring the entity to life and create it. This ritual is very, very simple. All you need to do is get down, set up your space the way you would normally do any working, pull energy to you, take the sigil, focus on the sigil, call the egregore's name, again, 3 or more times, and as you're calling to the egregore, you're going to be calling for it to awaken, calling for it to come to life. And the big thing here is I want you to visualize it actually doing so. Some people visualize like a golem suddenly actually being imbued with life. Some people, they imbue an entity in almost a fetal position, slowly open its eyes for the first time. Some just visualize it appearing out of nowhere, kind of like a genie popping out of a lamp or something. And that's fine. Any of these visualizations will work as long as it makes sense to you that this thing is now alive. And it is your loyal servant. Now, once it's there, once it's tangible, once you see it open its eyes, once you see it start moving, whatever visualization you choose, address it directly. Talk to it. That it helps to reinforce its reality to you and it. Don't question it or nothing. Always treat it respectfully, but treat it as if you have authority over it. And go ahead and give it its first order. Put it to work right away. Don't wait. Just put it to work. And that's really all there is to creating a very simple and basic servitor. Now, servitors and egregores, where's the difference? Well, this is debated a lot in magic among magicians. Some will say there's not a difference. Many will say there is. But without getting too deep into the debate, the general consensus, which is just the majority thought, is that an egregore is a servitor that has broken free and gotten free will and now has enough power that it acts upon its own, and in some cases even goes beyond its traditional reason for being created. And this becomes a problem because they're just running around rampant doing whatever they want to do, and that can be a problem. But like I said, I've never encountered this personally, and if you put the failsafe in there, you're okay, because when it breaks free, if it ever breaks free, and you can't summon it, it won't respond, you can still call the failsafe, boom, destroy it, problem solved. Easy peasy. Now, I will say this. From what I've read and the research I've done, if you destroy the anchor item of an egregore, nothing happens, because since it broke free, its energy is free now. It's intangible enough that it no longer is anchored, and therefore it's off on its own, so the anchor item's useless. So the commands are really what you have left to have power over it. The names and the destruction commands and the death commands. And those are very important. Now, like I said, I have never once in all my years had an egregore break free, go rogue, or become an egregore in the sense that I've lost control of it. I don't know why, but that's the case. And actually, all the magicians I've talked to have never had this issue either, as long as they followed the structure I gave you. When you put those fail-safes in there, it seems to just, you're fine. Most egregores actually tend to be created more accidentally as a thought form that starts feeding on an energy to the point where it gets powerful enough to break free, and it's no longer just a thought form. It gains its own sentience and runs off, starts doing its own thing. In fact, most hauntings I find are generally created by these type of entities. And no one created them intentionally. They just were created by mass amounts of energy that were focused into an area accidentally. There are some, I am absolutely certain there are some where someone was playing around with creating a thought form and they used no form of structure. They were just seeing if they could do it. And they did it, and they poured enough energy in it, and they just let it run around the house, and I guess you could say treated it like a house pet to the point where it got so much energy, it's just like, okay, I'm gone, and took off. And they didn't know how to control it. They didn't know what they were doing. They probably didn't even realize it ran off. They probably thought it dissipated and the spell just fizzled out. But using this structure, I have not met a magician that uses any form of structure similar to this that's ever had a servitor become an egregore. But that is a quick, simple rundown, very basics of what a servitor and an egregore are, and a very simple primer to creating a very basic servitor. Now, we done this example using protection. You could actually do this for mental focus even. You can actually create a servitor to help you with mental focus. And there's a lot more. I mean, this is a massive topic. There's entire books written on just servitor magic. And like I said, I do teach a whole class, but it's far more than I can do in a simple YouTube video. I may try and do another video on the topic later. We'll see. But for now, this is a very simple introduction that can get you started. And if you follow this outline, it's safe. You don't have to worry about it because, again, if you get the commands in there, you have your fail-safe. So if you even remotely suspect something's going sideways, you just give the destruction command, problem solved. So, real quick to review, what you would need for your servitor is a name. You want to design a sigil for it. And you want to be the only one that has these two things. You want to determine how you will call the servitor. You will determine the command for it to dissipate and the time frame that you want the servitor to be active. You will also come up with a death command, the failsafe command. No matter what, this command will instantly destroy the servitor. If you're going to use one, use an item anchor. I know some people don't. I do actually suggest you use an anchor. It's kind of a tangible way to remember the servitor, in my mind. Then you want to write your description of the servitor, what it looks like, its behaviors. And in that description, that's part of the ritual of creating it. You're going to go through and all the things you've decided, you're going to put into that ritual. And that description is going to be written as a letter to the servitor. And then there's the ritual of actually bringing it to life, where you actually create and bring it into existence. Follow those steps, make sure you got those things, and you will have no problems. And I encourage you actually, following that, to play around with it. Try out different things, different time frames, and keep a record and keep a journal. You will notice that the servitor really starts moving the pieces around for you to help out. Protection servitors, you will notice they help maintain the energy in the home. Less chaotic entities are bugging you. You'll notice a drastic change and more peacefulness around your home with them. One servitor you might actually try out that I enjoyed was I actually used a servitor to help cleanse and balance the energy in my home on a more regular basis when I couldn't do it. Kind of a energetic maid. And that was a really good one. So you might want to try that one out too. And you can use them to help you when you're sick. You can actually have a servitor that aids you in healing while you're sick. But you're really limited here only by your imagination. So get out there, play with it, experiment, keep notes. Servitor magic's a lot of fun. It's very versatile. I enjoy it. And again, it's like having, servants that you can delegate projects to, that they're doing their thing and while you're doing your thing. And it just increases your overall effectiveness in practice. So I hope this has helped. I hope you found it useful, and I do hope you give it a try and experiment with it. Please leave some comments below, like, subscribe, click the bell icon, and please share this with your friends or anyone interested in the topic. Again, keep your eyes out. We are getting ready to launch our school in the next couple of months. We're hoping to have at least 1 to 2 classes ready to go at launch. There will at least be one, but we're shooting to actually have 2 classes ready at launch. And I'm Drake, and this has been Working Dragon Mystic. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.